Good to be with you again. At the end of each August, I always look forward to the feast days of two very interesting persons. St. Monica on the 27th of August and St. Augustine the 28th. The only case we have of mother and son being united in the Church's praises. Two very interesting people. They lived in North Africa, in what today we would call Tunisia or the northeastern part of Algeria. We know that Monica was born around the year 322. So it would have been at the point when Christians were first coming out into the public, Constantine ending the persecutions, St. Helena working behind the scenes in Rome to have more basilicas turned into churches. Monica was a Christian, but her family gave her in marriage to a certain pagan man named Patricius. He had a violent temper. He made life miserable for his wife. And as if that wasn't enough, his mother was living in their home. And so the mother-in-law made life for Monica even more horrible. They had 3 sons who survived birth, the oldest being St. Augustine. And we know that Monica, obviously by her patience, her kindness, her goodness, her willingness to forgive, overcame all the evil she was experiencing from her husband and her mother-in-law. Eventually, even she led both of them to become Catholic Christians. Apparently at the time in that area, it was not the custom to baptize infant children. So when the time came for Augustine to be baptized, he said no, he didn't need baptism, he didn't need Jesus Christ. He had an incredible mind. He was searching all the different cults and theories that were floating around the world at that point. He got into almost all of them, and especially the Manichaean heresy, which taught that everything material is evil. And at that point, Monica thought she might help him to come to his senses by forbidding him to come home and forbidding him to even eat at home. But eventually she received the message of the Lord that yes, the day would come when he would come back to her and the Catholic Christian faith. We know that Augustine lived together with a woman about 15 years, had at least one son named Adeodatus, which means literally gift of God. He thought perhaps sexuality would satisfy his desire for happiness. No, it didn't. Wisdom, the philosophies, nothing satisfied him. The restless mind, the restless heart kept searching. Finally, one day he told his mother he was going down to the dockside to see some friend off on a ship. And he himself sailed on that ship to Rome. And Monica was very distressed to find that he had left her, lied to her. So she followed him up to Rome. But he had already gone up to the north, to the great city of Milan. And at the time, Milan was being served by Bishop Ambrose, who was himself a very interesting person. He had been appointed the civil governor of Milan, and at the time there was an election to select the next bishop, and there was a great controversy, great division among the Christians of the city. And finally, one child, it is said, called out, "Let Ambrose be bishop." And that was their decision. So he was baptized and confirmed, and then he was ordained a priest and then a bishop, and became a great leader. He was rather short of stature, but his sermons apparently touched the minds and hearts of lots of people. And it happened that Augustine heard him preaching and was deeply impressed by his teaching, picked up the scriptures, read more, studied more, and yes, under the influence of Ambrose, was received into the Catholic Church in his 30s. He went back with Monica to Rome to prepare for the sea journey back to North Africa. And we are told there that it was at that point that she fell ill and told Augustine not to worry about taking her body back to be buried in Africa. No, just bury her there. She was now content that Augustine was a Christian. And so when Augustine went back to North Africa, he eventually was ordained a priest and then bishop of Hippo, and gathered to himself a group in a community of faith and love, and wrote a rule of life for them, the Augustinian rule, and that became the rule for many monasteries and religious orders over the years. Even the Norbertine order follows really the rule of life established by St. Augustine. He had to confront many errors and heresies at the time. He was very strong in his defense of the Catholic faith, so that he became one of the four great doctors of the early Latin Church, along with Ambrose. It was a time when civil society was in chaos. The Vandals crossing across Europe and into North Africa. Civilization seemed to be disappearing, a time of great upheaval. The teachings of St. Augustine, the way he developed theology, really was dominant in the Catholic Church for almost 1,000 years, from the 300s into the 1300s. Monica had died in 387. Augustine would die in 354. Rather, he was born in 354. He died in 430, which would have made him about 76 years of age. I've always been fascinated by his life. He obviously was an extraordinary person, a very active, inquisitive mind, heart. One of his writings, The Confessions of St. Augustine, is available in paperback edition. You might want to look it up sometime. It's his confessions, not in the sense of confessing sins, but rather praising God, confessio, praising God who never gave up on him. In spite of all that he did, all the ways that he seemed to run away from God, God never gave up on him, always calling him to himself. I've often shared with folks the words from that book that express so much of his life. He said, "Late have I loved you, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside, and it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, I plunged into the lovely things which you created. You were with me, but I was not with you. Created things kept me from you, yet it if they had not been in you, they would not have been at all. You called, you shouted, and you broke my deafness. You flashed, you shone, and you dispelled my blindness. You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. I have tasted you. Now I hunger and thirst for more. You touched me, and I burned for your peace. I think that's such a beautiful expression of a soul searching for God, for true peace, for truth and life, for goodness. I often have used those words at the beginning of an RCIA process with folks thinking of becoming Catholics. So the folks at Fatima, before I left there, gave me these words engraved on a plaque, and I have that mounted on the wall of my bedroom. Famous words of Augustine. Augustine and Monica, two tremendous saints, models for all of us in following Christ, always searching for him, the God who never gives up on us, who's always searching for us, always calling us to himself, always calling us to a deeper relationship with him. God bless you and your loved ones.